All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order a little early because I think we can get through this. I'm HLRS, I'm the chair of the DRB. I'm going to call the February 17th, 2026 DRB meeting to order. We're going to take items on the agenda in the manner they appear, subject to one change, which is 451 Apple Tree Point Road is going to be deferred. Needs to meet the conservation board that we don't need to do anything to defer. So that's deferred. And so I'll start with the first item on our agenda, which is ZP 26-6, 355 North Street, request by the city of Burlington for replacement of Pomeroy Park Playground. We have an applicant.
Yeah, we have Max from Parks Online.
Hi.
Max. This was recommended for our consent agenda item. And so are there any board members that have any questions on the application? No. Anybody in the audience or online who wants to speak about it? All right, so I move that we approve ZP 26-6. Second, Miles. Okay, all in favor? All right, take a round of applause.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yes. 52 North Cove Road. Do you think that will take very long?
Probably not.
I'm wondering if we can't get Mr. Miller out of here a little quicker. Mr. Miller here?
It is yeah, it's here. Just give me a second.
Did we object to doing this one quickly first? No. So we're going to switch up the agenda a little bit.
Hello.
Mr. Miller, are you there?
Hi, yep, I'm here.
Right, so we're going to adjust the agenda to take ZP 25-425 52 North Cove Road sooner rather than later because we have the two 125 Lakeside projects, which will take a little bit more time. Mr. Miller, can you raise your right hand, and anyone else who wants to speak on this application, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Could you briefly just explain to us what you want to do? I think we obviously understand it, utility ready site for movable dwelling, but just walk us through the project.
Sure. Yeah, so it's a raised platform with utility connections. There's a small porch. There's a small storage shed for my bikes and my skis. Small footprint, minimal site disturbance. I have my wastewater permit. It's for a bottomless sand filter system. My wetland permit is administratively complete. Everything's in compliance with floodplain requirements, and I'm working with the conservation board on buffer considerations, and I'm in the process of updating the site plan to include native riparian plantings. Otherwise, I'm totally agreeable to any other recommended conditions and happy to answer any questions.
You said your wetlands permit is administratively complete, but it's not been issued yet?
It has not been issued yet, no.
Have you seen the proposed condition with limits of clearing from the riparian conservation zone?
Yep, and I'm working with Arrowwood Environmental right now. This guy I'm working with, Jeff, put together a memo for the city about the specifics of the plan with the natural area. And we're updating that right now to include the plantings, and I'm going to update my site plan to show exactly where those are going to be. They're probably going to be silver maple trees, but that's in process.
And is the 100-foot wetland setback here, is that a class 1 or it says it's a class 2?
This is class 2 here. The city has a 100-foot buffer. It's not a setback. The state has a 50-foot.
Right, state's 50. City has 100. Well, we have different, we allow those buffer impacts by permit within the 100. Questions from the board? No?
Again, just, I didn't really look too closely at the design of your raised platform, but are you putting footings down? Are you excavating for footings?
The platform, I'm here with my dad, by the way, he might help me out with this one, but it's the platform is going to be on helical piers.
Okay.
And the porch is just going to be on just like sonotube footings, or not sonotubes, but something like that.
Sure. But then for your bottomless sand filter, for your wastewater, you're gonna have to somehow get in a trench below frost. I mean, like, so you are gonna have to excavate a trench for your wastewater system, I'm guessing.
That is correct, yep.
Okay. So you're not proposing elimination of all excavation. This is just minimal excavation for your house footprint, and then your normal utilities that you'd expect for your wastewater and water service.
Yep. Yeah, there's excavation happening for
Okay.
the septic and the water line.
And that excavation to the bottomless sand filter that goes through the wetland buffer, I guess it's part of your wetland permit, is confirming?
Yeah, correct. They have those, that's included in the square footage of the disturbance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question for staff. This talks about finalizing plans with the conservation board and ultimately the issuance of a final wetland permit. Do you think we need to see this again when those are issued? I wouldn't. So, anybody on the board need to see those again? Well, obviously those plans will have to be incorporated in the final. Anybody in the audience here to speak on this application? I know we have some comments from Sharon that were brought forward today. Those are in the record. We have reviewed them. She here online?
She's not. Send the written comments.
And with that, I will close the public hearing on ZP 25-425, and I'll move that we approve the application and subject to the staff, adopt the staff's findings and conclusions and conditions. And I would also add the condition that the final wetland permit and approved plans need to be provided as part of the application for staff review, and the conservation zone plans being worked on also need to be provided and included as part of the application. Staff review.
I will second that.
All right, all those in favor? All right. All right, we have two 125 Lakeside Avenue projects. And they are ZP 2618 and ZP 2619. One is for the 3-lot subdivision, and the other is for the specific construction of mixed-use residential commercial development with infrastructure improvements. They are essentially two sides of the same coin, so we're going to take them together. We have all of the applicants here for this.
AJ?
Yeah.
If I can just briefly, since the staff report was posted, we've received a number of supplemental plans that have all been uploaded to the packet. So we have revised photometric plan, we have a phasing plan, we have a revised landscaping plan. A little back and forth on the traffic, but I'll pass the buck to Public Works on.
Public Works here.
Did you say revised landscaping plan?
All right. So let's get everybody who wants to speak on this application, raise your right hand. It's already too many hands. And just stick on this. Yeah. And anyone who online who wants to speak, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury? Who on the applicant team would like to come up and walk us through the project? Knowing that we've seen some original versions of this through sketch plan, I think, and otherwise, but I would start just generally with the project plans.
You, Riley?
You know, wherever you want to take us, but start with the development of the building.
Okay. I'm gonna start with just some introductions, if it's okay, short, just a real brief overview, connecting this sketch plan from September 24 to today. So I'm John Kahlo, representing the applicant, by building a LLC, which is the applicant is a partnership between John's companies and Ride Your Bike LLC. Todd Sarandos is here representing Ride Your Bike LLC, the property owner, and Andrew Foley is here representing Jonathan Rose and Company, which is a managing partner of the partnership. One of the advantages of having someone like Jonathan Rose and Company is they bring a lot of wealth and experience in mixed use, mixed income projects in different markets around the country. And we're just really, really pleased to have that here. So, I'm not sure all of you were on the DRB back in September of 24, so just want to just make a couple comments. One about scale, another about detail, and then just the mobility network. In terms of scale, back in September of 24, the application contemplated 3 different parcels and 13 acres of real estate. The parcels were 125 Lakeside Avenue, which is the project site for tonight's application, 175 Lakeside Avenue owned by Champlain College, and 68 Sears Lane by the city of Burlington. The idea was to collaborate and try to apply the metrics of the new CAD zoning overlay in a way that the outcome, the collaborative effort is loving. And in its many ways, that has borne fruit. But the main point about scale is that was very, very broad. Tonight's application is very focused. It's basically only 125 Lakeside Avenue and just 1.5 acres out of that 6.3. So that's that. The other is just the level of detail. I don't know if you recall back then that it was really sort of a broad brush, and that while we addressed all the metrics of the sketch plan review, it was at a really high level. We talked about scale and density, and housing typologies, and infrastructure, and on and on. But it was, and Scott, as part of his staff review, acknowledged that it was very, very broad, and as a result, would need to be revisited, and that day is today. The third point I just want to make is that the foundational element of that sketch plan was a mobility, a public realm network that literally and figuratively stitched those 3 parcels together, provided an organizational framework that future development on those 3 parcels could proceed. And that is one connective tissue that has carried over from September 24 to what you're going to see tonight. So, fast forward to the present, today is like that first step in the proverbial 1,000-mile journey. And I'll just turn it over to Andrew and team.
Great.
Thanks. Thank you, John. So for the record, my name is Andrew Foley. I'm Director of Development at Jonathan Rose Companies, the proud partner of the Right team. We're excited to be starting on this big transformative development. I'm joined by our architects, GOA Architecture, who will be taking you through the project. We also have our landscaper with Wagner Hodgson and Kevin Warden, Engineering Ventures, who also come up to briefly speak. But mostly we want to get into your questions that you have about the project. So we'll try to be brief in this initial overview. Next slide. As John mentioned, you've probably seen the larger C-Core development, as it's called, the three party public-private partnership. We're focusing on the first phase of that project of Building A in the outline here, catty corner from Hula, across from the Innovation Center on Lakeside Avenue. So two parts of our application is the site plan review for that plan, and then the subdivision of the right-of-bike parcel within that plan. So what we'll be taking you through is the building design and the first segment of public space that we envision for the site. Just go to the next slide here. So this is an image of the building we're proposing to build, looking towards the lake. Actually, if you just zoomed up from this very room here, this is not farther down the street. So we're proposing 204 units of mixed income housing, utilizing both the local inclusionary zoning ordinance and the Act 250 priority housing project. So we're proposing that a minimum of these units are affordable to households at or below 80% of area median income. You'll see that we're also proposing to build the first two segments of what we envision will be public roadways, Innovation Lane cutting through in the front of the building there, and then the first section of Cross Street or North Cross Street. And we'll get into more of how we see what we're looking to do in this application, and then what will be brought to you later in future phases. So without going into too much detail, I want to introduce Andy from GOA to take you through the project, and just want to say, so we thought about bringing GOA to the table very early on this project because they are known nationally as thought leaders in mass timber design and building deeply green, very forward-thinking buildings. And so we're delighted to see the work that you and your team have done on the screen, and welcome you to come up and take us through it.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks for having us. So I'll walk through briefly the design of the building as proposed, hand it off to Amy to talk about the landscape. So the building, as you see here, this is the first parcel, but because one of the goals of the project is to, in this first phase, to hint at the types of density and the different mixtures of that may come down the line. The goal is to create not just a single block of construction, but really try to break this up into multiple individual buildings. And so this is actually organized as two individual buildings that occupy the same lot, that are then organized around two internal courtyards that are facing on the west side towards the train tracks. You can kind of see here in this view, and you'll see it a bit more clearly in the subsequent slides. It's a 6-story building along the easternmost portion along what will be Innovation Lane, and then it steps down to a 5-story building as we go down to the west. So this is the proposed view, again, from Lakeside Avenue. If you were just to walk down the street, and then the future Innovation Lane is to your left. The building is organized around a primary element on the corner, which is masonry facade, which is designed to speak to the character of the existing mill building and Innovation Center across the street. And then it's flanked by these residential buildings on either side, which are pick up on some of the tonality, some of the massing as the mill building, but then take that language and have a more appropriate residential scale for the fenestration. If we look at the streetscape, and you'll see this in all of the renderings as we move forward, one of the primary goals is to find ways to activate street, primarily Innovation Lane, with public facing uses. So no, that's obviously part of the zoning requirements for the district, but it is really a goal of the project, especially in this first phase. When this is basically will be a building in a large parking lot to really have a lot of liveliness at that ground floor and commit to a streetscape that is engaging and public facing. And so you'll see that the storefronts, which are 3 different primary uses envisioned.
Can I interrupt
Yeah,
and ask you
please
a
do.
question? Just want to clarify something. So, staff report notes that the proposed construction consists of 2 attached buildings.
Correct.
I thought I heard you say that these are not attached.
They are attached
They are
to the
attached.
bridge. Yes. So
Sorry, I thought they. All right, thank you.
yeah, great. Yeah, and so as we move then down Lakeside Avenue, looking, down Innovation Lane, looking back north towards the Innovation Center, you can see this is exactly the point you raised about where those buildings are connected are by pedestrian bridges. So recessed back from the street, open air connections. So they are allowed to function as a single building, but from a massing perspective are really 2 individual buildings connected at that joint. And that joint is about mid-block down Innovation Lane, and that is the primary entry point into the site, both the courtyards as well as the public entries for residents and their guests. So this is the kind of the main access for the site, and also corresponds with the proposed pedestrian street crossing over Innovation Lane. It's probably more thematically appropriate to today, but also one of the goals is that this isn't just the ways in which this is activated are 4-season, and really thinking through ways in which some of those ground places are programmed to create activation throughout the day. And so the development team can speak to this probably in more detail, but a lot of thought has been put into what are the types of tenants that will occupy those ground floor spaces, how do they reinforce the quality of life for the residents, and then also, again, invest in that future neighborhood that's going to follow on in subsequent phases. Finally, as we come down to the southern end of the building, so this is what Andrew alluded to as North Cross Street. So this is running east-west across the street. To the far left would be the train. So again, you're seeing the southernmost portion of the building. You can see the massing stepping down to the west. Up top, those are one of the benefits of that step down is one to obviously mitigate the scale as we move towards the residential neighborhood to the west, but also to create some really, we think would be pretty special landscape elements at the top level. So those would be roof decks for building residents with expansive views out to Lake Champlain and Adirondacks. So pretty special moments in the building that this I think reinforces some of the massing ideas that were baked into the zoning overlay. And then as we go into the building courtyard, so this is what the kind of the daily life of the residents would be like. So this is it's 2 primary courtyard spaces, which Amy will get into here in more detail shortly. But the goal is to, just as we really would like a lively streetscape on Innovation Lane, we do want a lively activated courtyard for the residents and visitors. And so this would be rather than dedicating that very valuable space to a surface parking, the goal is to really minimize the amount of vehicles that are stored on site. There's only 25 spaces when this is within the primary development, and really giving all that space back to landscape, gardens, and bicycle storage. I'll let Kevin talk through.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so as AJ mentioned, there are 2 items before you tonight. One of those items, -19, is a 3-lot subdivision, which is before you here. And I think the main thing to point out here is in the upper northwest, upper left corner is the subject lot, about 1.5 acres. Running alongside that is the Innovation Lane right-of-way, which would eventually be extended further south. And as John alluded to, we've been at this for a while, and even though this looks like it's just taking one corner, it's part of an overall very well thought out plan that we've worked with city partners, many urban planners to come up with the overall layout, and this is just that first phase. You can see existing features if you're familiar with the parking lot, but otherwise the 3 lots are lot 1, subject lot, lot 2, the remaining parking, and then lot 3, which is a lot just south of the subject lot. Which hopefully is something you see before you soon, but this is the subdivision piece, which is the -19.
Kevin, are you the guy to speak to stormwater?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah,
We
happy
had a
to.
conversation.
It's gonna lead right in nicely to Amy's work on the landscape, but right now we have this 6 acres of pavement plus some from the city to the south, which flows to the north. You'll see a series of dots along the top row. Those are catch basins that collect stormwater and send it over to the Parkway project, which then sends it north right by this building into a pond out back, which then goes to the barge canal, untreated and unmitigated. That's existing conditions. So under proposed conditions, we're integrating gravel wetlands in the courtyards, rain gardens along the street front, permeable pavers, and that'll meet the city's requirements. We've met with Seth from the Water Resources Division, and that will meet the state's stormwater requirements. We've met with those regulators, and it'll discharge to the same place, but it'll be slowed down and treated before it does. And we're almost like at 100% impervious cover, and the landscape plan you're about to see introduces a lot of permeable areas, including pavers, similar to what Great Streets have done downtown.
Kevin, can you also talk about sanitary sewer? 'Cause I know.
Sure. Yeah, we'll hit all the waste. Yeah, so sanitary sewer, I think we probably talked about it a couple of years ago. It's been a big topic. We discharge into the Pine Street sewer, which is gravity line that drops about, a foot or two in elevation over almost a mile of flow to the treatment plant. So it's flat. And it collects a lot of combined sewer from the hillside. So we work very closely with Water Resources to understand that and know that there's capacity for this project during dry weather, no rain events. But we know that there's little to no capacity during wet weather events. And so we've worked with the city to analyze that carefully. We've looked at every combined sewer overflow on the Pine Street corridor for the past 5 years and determined that for the required constraint, the legally required constraint is to meet the 5-year storm event and not increase the CSO during that time. It's about a 2-hour window. And on the plan, it's probably not on the landscaping plan, but on the plan we can share with you, we're proposing tanks right next to the innovation lane right of way that there'll be some telemetry so that when the Pine Street sewer starts to back up due to a wet weather event, we'll throw a valve closed automatically in the sewer manhole in the new innovation lane. And water from this project, wastewater, will start to back up into the tanks, which will have alarms. And the storage size in those tanks equates to that 2-hour period under a peak flow coming out of the building. So it's something we've worked closely with the city on, and it's a little innovative, but it's not unheard of. The Harbor Watch condos have something similar that we worked on years ago. And
Now, is that gonna work for all phases of the development? 10 years down the road, are these tanks gonna suit the whole thing?
yeah, Miles, the idea is that they're expandable, but we also we also planning on a few things. One, the city knows, has some ideas about what to do to improve the CSO conditions downstream. So if those happen, there will be additional capacity during wet weather events. The city's always separating out systems, et cetera, but there's also some pipe sizing issues down Pine Street. And then secondly, the flows we're using to size those tanks are fairly conservative. They're the state-based flows per unit.
60 gallons per day.
You got it. Yeah, it's a little lower than that for larger units, but for most of these 1-bedroom units, exactly, that's what it is.
So 210 a day?
210 for the 2-bedroom units and larger, 140 for the single bedroom efficiency. And so what we're going to do is put daily water meter monitoring and track the actual flows, and we'll also be able to track the amount of usage of these tanks. So both the water we're using as a building and the water we're actually needing to store during CSO events. And the goal is to work with the city and the state to adjust numbers moving forward. So the hope is that these tanks, if the city hasn't made improvements, will have more capacity than currently we're using.
Just curious, did you do a cost benefit analysis where you looked at, because I know in 2024, you were talking about potentially brand new sewer line down Pine Street parallel to the existing one. Did you cost that out and then figure we could do this instead?
Yeah, if we had more time, I'd be happy to tell you all about it.
And then all takings.
Okay, that's good, good, at least you didn't just.
Yeah, we went through the process again with the city and their other consultants, and it's a pretty big effort.
Well, the tanks would be located on, like, say, the east side of the innovation.
Exactly, yeah, they're actually just off the edge of it, and they're in that second lot where the remaining parking is. If Amy, you go to the landscape, I can show you right where. Oh, okay.
Identified.
Yeah, they're there.
Right here.
In that green space
Oh, yeah.
to the right. And ideally those,
Is that 125 Lakeside, that space to the right?
it's, yes, it's all part of 125. It's actually in the remaining lot, 2 subdivision.
Right. I will continue with the landscape. So, as we were just pointing out, those tanks, Innovation Lane is on the west side of those, all the way from Lakeside to North Cross Street, as you can see. Really right now, this is a two-way lane for this phase 1. Down the road, we're anticipating it being a one-way with the bike lane going the other way. So that's down the road. Ultimately, we'll have a parking on one side, on the west side, and that's a band of permeable paving. And then we'll have within that band, so as you can see, these are the white cars, and then we'll have street trees that have soil cells underneath to help the longevity of these trees. And so that gray band is all permeable paving, and that water will be fed into those soil cells. We've also worked with the city to make sure that those trees, a VJ with the city, he approved all these trees and suggested certain trees. So along all the streetscapes, really all our plantings, we ran these by states, what we're proposing. So then right after the gray band is our 8-foot sidewalk that carries all the way down. And then in the middle of the block, as Andy mentioned, is our main entry into our parcel. Ultimately, there will be the parking to the east. We're talking about restriping it all to maximize its potential of getting as many spaces as we can. But a lot of people will be parking there, crossing the street, and crossing a bridge, which is a rain garden that welcomes you to the main entrance as you come in. So continuing on, there's additional rain gardens. Not only where the bridge is, there's also one just flanking the entrance over here, as well as all alongside the building facade, taking the water from the roof and treating it. Going down to North Cross Street, this is a smaller right of way, and we'll have a band of paving where the trees are, and then a sidewalk, which is actually on private land, but will be used by the public, as you can see as you wander through. And then the main entrance into our parking car garage, and then to the surface lot. Really is how people will get there.
Do either of you have elevation views of the project from the bike path side?
Or over
Yeah, we looking from the west. Yes, yeah, we do have some clear elevations, but further down.
Renderings.
So this gives you a sense. So this is this is basically from adjacent to the train. So if you were.
So if I'm standing, it's elevated, so this is me not on the bike path, but sunken down, right?
Right, yes.
Where's your parking structure? Is it off to my right?
the right.
To the right.
Do we have a view of that?
So it is, let's go back here. So this is the view of that from North Cross Street. So it is part of the building's architecture. It's not necessarily a secondary parking element. So it is, it has 4 floors of housing above it, and you have basically the same base facade system, only except that instead of storefront, you have parking screens.
So it's mostly ground level.
Yeah, the parking is quite small as a proportion of the whole building. Yeah.
And so as it wraps around that west side, it'll be the same architecture.
Exact structure, yep, it's exactly the same. Yeah, so it's more like structured parking than a garage, it's one level of parking on the first level, but is it 12 spaces? It's only 12 spaces, exactly.
So on the bi-directional traffic on the innovation lane, what was the reasoning for like doing that initially and not just doing the one way with the bike lane off at the start?
Ultimately, I believe it was in order to provide access to the parcel.
Yeah, just to speak to that a little bit. So, because right now the lot currently it's adjacent to the public lot, 68 Sears, and so what we have is just a temporary easement to kind of to take traffic through there, but the primary way to access the site will be off of Lakeside Avenue now.
Okay, there'd be no way to get out if there was an O.
Right.
Well, but so I guess my question is, could traffic continue? Because currently, like people leaving the parking lot sometimes go down Sears Lane, Parkway up Sears Lane, and so I was just wondering why doing the bi-directional traffic and not just having people go kind of looping around to the Sears Lane, especially with the Champlain Parkway opening. It seems like it would make sense for people to just access from Lakeside.
I can just say on the subdivision, there continues to be a right of way, you know, following pretty much the existing path of travel.
Yep.
I don't think the plan is to restrict that, but I think the idea is as a self-sustaining development here off of Lakeside, it has coming to and from Lakeside as an option. The other thing is there really isn't the biking infrastructure to the south yet. You'd be biking kind of through an uncontrolled parking lot to access that bi-directional bike lane in the future, which will eventually be connected to Harrison Avenue and the bike path infrastructure.
Over the train track.
Yep.
I think what's important to note too is that we don't have as much vehicular parking here because we have a lot of bike parking. As you can see at the entrance, it's sort of distributed throughout the project. So a lot along Innovation Lane in the main entry and then within the courtyard. And so the interior of this project, there's two courtyards. There's the mobility courtyard, what we're calling down here. And that's where, you know, cars come in vehicles, but also a lot of the bike parking. And it's a really informal space or hardscape, but so it feeds what's happening in the buildings. But there's also a rain garden, an area that is flexible to allow for movement from inside to the outside and certain functions. Again, there's permeable pavers in these bands. And then as we move around to the northern courtyard, this is a more quiet, more green space, which is centered around another rain garden, a large lawn, and then a resident garden out here, which can expand into this 20-foot wide easement. Right now, we can't really put anything there because it's a railroad easement. So for now, we're thinking maybe, you know, they could do more garden space there as time comes.
Speaking of the entrances, can you just point out where the entrances are?
The entrances to
the building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. So there are a few different uses along this ground floor. So this center point where the cursor is the main public entry, both into the building for vertical circulation, the resident lobby, the main gate into the mobility courtyard. There are a series of other entries into the building because as you look at the ground floor programming, so start at the northwest, those are residential units that are raised slightly above grade. So those are private units that have windows out to Lakeside, but no access to Lakeside. Northeast corner is a commercial space, which will have public entry doors facing out onto Lakeside and Innovation Lane. There's a secondary entry here, so that's a pedestrian gate for residents primarily who would be coming up to their units onto Lakeside. There's another commercial space here, which is kind of the center block of the building, which will have its own direct access out to Lakeside Avenue. And then this east-west block in the center is really most of the amenity spaces for the residents. So that's facility management, public entry. It's your package delivery, it's kind of all of the main operations for the residents is occurring in that east-west bar. And then as we get to the south building, as Amy mentioned, there's a quite large public facing bicycle storage room right there at the corner. So it's, intended to have the least amount of friction for people to utilize their bicycles because it's right there as you walk into the building. You have enclosed storage. Then there is a larger commercial space. So this is the largest future tenant space here, which occupies the majority of that Lakeside Avenue, or excuse me, Innovation Lane frontage for the south building. And then as we go around the corner to North Cross Street, there is some tenant storage, there's the indoor waste receptacles, and then there's the covered parking. So the North Cross Street is much more kind of a back at house operations, really allowing Innovation Lane to be the primary activation for all those public facing uses.
But really, if people are coming from the south or from the north, they really have to enter through that center.
They wouldn't have to, but they would likely, they in all likelihood, that is where they're going. That's how you get to the elevators, if they get to one of the main stairs. It's the main entry lobby. So yeah, that's where we expect most people to be entering the building.
And so the residential walkway on that south building is external, or I guess on the top building too, but where those like patios, that's outdoor?
Yes, yeah, that's covered.
And so basically everything is kind of around that single corridor.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that brought up a question that may go towards maybe part of traffic discussion with BHB and water up. The commercial spaces, right now, is also a question for staff. There's nothing programmed for those commercial spaces that we're approving at this point. It's just commercial space, right?
They were represented as permitted, so no conditional use, so it doesn't really matter. But the application plan did call out these specific uses like health club and the other. It doesn't matter because they're permitted, they wouldn't have to go on board.
But my question is, does the transportation trip generation account for the commercial space? Not all have the same trip generation.
It does, yeah. So I think it was a fitness center, a makerspace, and retail, small retail shop. Those would use the trip generation rates for those.
Maybe we should talk about traffic center.
Another, just a few items that were brought up in the notes was snow storage. So I just wanted to note where that was located off the parking lot in the back, we're showing right now, as well as the trash will be brought out on the day of trash to the end of the street and then brought back in. Those are two items. So.
I think the report said that it was almost all studios and 1 bedrooms, just a few 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, so I'll go to the unit mix. So we have 204 units, 49 of those are proposed to be studios, 122 1 bedrooms, and then 33 2 bedrooms. So the preponderance of them are 1 bedrooms, is the majority of the units in the building.
It also mentioned that there were balconies on the west elevation.
Yep.
Is that for the entire back of the elevation?
Yes,
Or is it
so-
just a stairwell?
Absolutely. So the majority of the units you can see here in this drawing. So these are proposed, majority of the units are 1 bedrooms that are deck access units, which means that you are not going through a enclosed double-loaded corridor with a low ceiling to your door, but really everyone is circulating on these exterior balconies. And so these are exterior egress balconies, which also serve as public circulation, exterior space for residents. So they are oversized in a sense beyond what egress would dictate in the with the intent that they're going to provide an amenity to the residents. So it gives them outdoor space directly adjacent to their primary entry, but it also allows the development to, in our mind, have a different sense of community because you have much more sort of public facing circulation than you would have otherwise.
If I live at the end, I have to walk through my neighbor's front yard to get to my door.
Is there any separation in, like, let's say, right, somebody puts out chairs, etc. Is there any like separation as to like how far they're getting out into that like public facing corridor, or is it basically they just it's included as part of the space and you're potentially dodging around chairs as you're going down that.
So the plan is to yeah. Oh. So the plan is to fairly dramatically oversize them relative to what would be required for egress. But there's also been a lot of discussion around measures to take to say curate what might be happening in the exterior. And so one of the plans is to include integrated seating and storage. And so the residents wouldn't need to bring their own chairs because that would be part of what's built into the structure. So they would have a bench seating, which also functions as storage directly outside of the unit. That would cut down on the accumulation of things up, yeah.
It might be, just for consideration, it might be good, like similar to, I think, how we did like the bike path on Main Street and how other places have done it, but just some color delineation between what would kind of be expected to be the front area that's kind of your space, and then allowing kind of some clear area delineation for circulation.
Yeah.
An example of this exists in Burlington, College Battery condominium project.
Those aren't, but that is a condominium. This is a condominium. Because that walkway is a limited common element, right? So it's not owned, you can't really be out there in the same way. So if these are rented, where does the rent start? Where does the rent end? It's gonna be something to articulate, because the last thing you're gonna want is Unit 405 complaining about Unit 401's flags. So think about that.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Returning to the number of bedrooms per unit, that strikes me as far to one side of the extreme. Have you thought of that more diversity of bedrooms?
I have more 2 bedrooms.
Or 3?
Yeah, no, I could speak to that. I mean, and we did a pretty extensive survey of rental housing in the Burlington area. The demand is at the 1 bedroom and the studio level, significantly less than the 2-bedroom level. So that's where we see the most need for housing right now, particularly in this neighborhood. But as the project evolves and multiple buildings are built, I think you're going to see more diversity in unit types for family housing. So this is what we're proposing for this application, this project now, but we understand that back to the broader project that was being discussed, you'll see more unit types in the future.
Also speaking to the larger project, I think the idea was to generally rise in height to the east.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea to make the buildings to the east 7 or 8 stories?
Yeah, the permitted envelope as you get to the east side of the site, across from Lakeside, it does permit more height. So, we have nothing to present for sure today, but working with the city who really led crafting the zoning code, we do see more scale.
Can we talk about traffic?
Yeah.
So we have Public Works here, and I'd like to hear what they have to say. We also have Dave here, but
I think so here. Where you want to see me?
Very specific. Maybe we should come out.
Be flying around the made will be on so
So hi, I am Laura Wheelock. I am the city engineer with Public Works, for those of you who have not seen me on previous applications or other projects. VHB had submitted the traffic study on behalf of the applicant. DPW had a chance to go through review. Our preliminary comments were provided from staff, uploaded to the document, and VHB has provided a response to most of those. DPW has not had a chance to fully review the responses to the comments. We've taken a preliminary look. I think fundamentally the message from DPW here is we worked early on with the larger project to understand what capacity we had in our network now versus what they would eventually need at a full build out scenario. And the fundamental of it is this phase 1 fits. There are specific details that we need to work out, and some of them we can't even tell you today. Champlain Parkway's signal timing is very unique, very specific. We have our own Act 250 that dictates what we can and can't do with that. And we still need to work overtime after it opens with this applicant on just getting the timing right, so that the whole area feels a little bit better balanced. The flow of traffic that's gonna come from the development is gonna play with the signals just a little bit differently than when it first opens. So the fundamental message, we generally support the project. We think we're gonna get to a good means. I don't see any strong red flags here, but we do need to kind of work in a provision that says, you know, the applicant at the time of occupancy, we're gonna check with DPW that the timings are all working out right.
Because what we're talking about is mostly the signal timing at the intersection of the Champlain Parkway and Lakeside Avenue, which has a condition, as I recall, that it has to be kept at a certain timing because of the LOS D&E conditions that result on the movements there.
Yes.
And as I read it with this project, under the current timing, you have an E movement, which is not overly problematic for one movement in an urbanized district, but it's something you want to avoid.
Correct.
And you don't necessarily know how exactly to do.
And also how everything's gonna play out. As we've studied our traffic network since even that was permitted and the conditions were put on the parkway, we have less traffic in our network in the south end. People are moving around in different ways than they are in other parts of the city. The east side of our city, traffic has recovered. They're now exceeding pre-COVID levels, but again, the south end is still moving around with more alternative trips than they are with the cars. So the assumptions that went in are a little bit more challenged. We need to study this. It's part of our conditions as it opens, 6 months after it opens, through the next 2 years, which will overlap with the opening of this project, starting to put some traffic through. But yes, fundamentally, that is the hiccup point in that whole scenario. As you guys might have seen during their sketch plan, you know, we are working collaboratively as the city. We also have our community development office here today. One of the reasons why they cannot go through Sears Lane is that's a city parcel, and while we have an easement on their parcel, they don't have the same reciprocal easement back on our parcel to have it as a public way. Even though it's informally used that way, we don't enforce it. It's not something an applicant can really count on as they're trying to make independent utility. But we're working to get there. And once that happens, once the parkway opens, once we own it, there's other conditions that may be able to relieve the signal in ways that we can.
You're talking about Sears Lane out to Pine, is that?
Sears Lane in and or even a connection into the parkway, but there are things that we can't guarantee today as it relates to future development or relieving the signal that we are all working on.
Would this hiccup go away if there was one-way traffic on Innovation Lane instead of two-way?
No, the hiccup would go away if we didn't have the same conditions that we
Okay,
have.
so it has nothing to do with one-way versus two-way on Innovation Lane.
Well, the one way, the problem would be that the Sears Lane right away isn't there, so you couldn't actually use it.
That's a
to exit.
No lawyer could write.
that's a survey, that's an easement kind of solution that could be.
It's tough to get from a city to grant a new easement.
Yeah.
Let's say the same condition applied to the petroglyphs, to City Market, to pretty much all of the developments that occurred along the parkway. You had to assume whatever signal timing was baked into the EIS couldn't be touched. Because that was, magical numbers.
I didn't know.
So on it's a little bit beyond the scope of this. I just wanted to make sure, so like the future use where it is the one way, is that a Shero or is that actually a dedicated bike lane? From the renderings, it looks like a Shero, so I was just kind of curious
We're still working out the details of what that looks like as it relates to maintenance. The applicant is interested in pursuing dedication and acceptance to make it a public right of way. We talked just, a few months ago about how plowing is really the hiccup in all of our maintenance scenarios. How does that end up working? Where does the snow go? What does the divider look like? How flexible is that?
Yeah, because I just see it being used as a two-way, one-way street if that does go there, because
it's interesting, because South Madalinski has just a yellow line that separates the reverse direction for our bike lane, and that's well respected. We went to do something similar on North Champlain Street, and people were purposely trying to go around the bollards to get into the bike lane. There's different parts of town that accept the bike infrastructure in different ways. this community that they're working on developing is very much alternative transportation focused, is local traffic that is going to be in here. I think that they're gonna have a little bit more success implementing even a non-restricted or non-protected area.
David, anything to share? Do that, anything to add?
I think Laura did a great job summarizing it. Happy to answer questions.
Your trip ends are not based on some assumed bike usage, but based on just normal metrics for the number of units and the commercial space, right?
In the trip generation estimates, we did use a urban setting for the trip generation rates as opposed to a suburban site. So there is some reduction baked into that trip generation estimate.
How much is that reduction?
I think it's about 8%. I think is the much area.
Because obviously the parking is lower than what you want, like a substantially lower amount of parking than what you might historically see in a 200 unit building, but trip generation doesn't reflect 15 cars parking, which is something I'm trying to square. You've got 15 cars parking, but you've got 98 trip ends. Those don't align where those people are jump in.
I believe across the street.
Yeah. So across the street, as we mentioned, there's the crosswalk and the bridge.
Yeah.
People can park in the existing parking lot.
But that existing parking lot's gonna go away.
And there'll be more parking in the future. So that's a future problem to deal with for sure.
Do you have a parking arrangement between those two lots?
Yes.
Parking agreement? Is that part of the application? Like, do we have that in the record?
We don't have the agreement yet. It's the same company, it's the same owner.
Might not be forever.
Yeah, is that also, so is that also commercial parking or will be allowed to be used for commercial parking? I think that a lot is permitted now, right? Or it's either hula or I guess it is paid, the hula has paid per spot parking, right? Yeah. So,
And the medical center is there as well.
I'm Champlain, right? I don't know if that's still there. Another one.
In the application, AJ, I mentioned it in the report because the parking's there. I think you're restriping it. It's pretty else to.
I just was accounting for that. Make it work.
There's not a minimum that they need to meet because they're not building any new. The maximum supplement.
What I think Kevin's answer is gonna accommodate whatever overflows over there through as we develop it. I mean, obviously it's all one giant parking lot now. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
As you build it out, you're not gonna get stuck with the gap of wait, we need, 100 people need to go find parking. Ideally, they're all riding their bikes, but
One would hope so, right?
no one's riding their bike, except you, no one's riding their bike. You two, one guy will watch, rides a bike every day.
Let's say ideally like the septic tanks that will be monitored for usage. I think this would be a good way to monitor parking demand for this first phase. Can calibrate that as this moves on as well.
Okay.
The geothermal system, that's just gonna be for this one.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's just gonna be for this one development, and any future developments will have their own geothermal wells.
And have you, saying open source or closed loop?
Considering open source scope. Okay. Similar to what we've had success with right down the road here, Hula and at Champlain College.
Right. And have you considered a pilot well, just make sure you can consider it or drill it?
It's been drilled.
Oh, cool.
Very productive.
Good.
So lots of water.
Lots of water.
I have one last question about this building structure. I think I saw that the second to sixth levels are a wood frame building.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Oh,
Sure. Everybody asked for. So the plan is to use cross-laminated timber, which we have samples of in that suitcase over there. It is type 4 construction for the floor decks, and so it would be a combination of a non-combustible steel framed first floor, and then above that would be this hybrid of fiber protected wood framing along with a mass timber, cross-sectional timber deck. And so the benefit of that is that one, it's a carbon storage material, which is fantastic for the environment. It is an exposed finish, and so the actual structural deck is your ceiling, and so all of the units will have exposed wood interiors, and it's also quite thin. And so, as opposed to, let's say, a standard 24-inch floor truss that we would see in multifamily residential, this floor package is closer to 8 inches, and so we were able to take that savings and drop the building height and stay below all of the required building heights, which on this site, given the topography, would have been challenging, frankly, given how much it slopes from south to north.
So is the material treated, fire treated?
No. So again, careful what you ask for, because that might talk too long.
Yeah.
So mass timber is a code approved material under the 2021 building code, which is now part of the 2025 Vermont building code. It just adopted. Its fire resistance rating is based on basically on its cross section, and so the way in which the wood operates in a fire scenario is that it develops a char layer. That char layer is very predictable, and so it's essentially oversized for the hour unit. And so for in this case, it's a 1 hour separation, and so the floor panels are sized basically so that it could lose that amount of thickness of structural material, and the structure is uncompromised. Yeah,
so this will potentially be the first mass timber building in Vermont.
It's not the first mass timber building. Our construction team over there has some experience with that already, but it would certainly be the largest by a fair margin. Yeah.
There was something in the report about solar panels on the roofs, and just like to encourage you to think about social space also. And
yes. Yeah, so that's the benefit of this tiered, and I don't know, Scott, if I can share this screen. Yeah.
Well, we do the true top of the building will have solar panels, but there's a setback where that has a fairly generous area. Social space, but we agree.
Yeah. So kind of on that note, which just reminded me. So I know that other places that have tried to do roof decks have had issues with finding insurance companies that'll cover them. Have you examined like whether you'll be able to get insured for the roof deck or whether
I'm not aware of a specific chunk. I mean, we do roof top spaces as amenity spaces in most of our buildings. So we don't anticipate anything that would be a barrier to it. But appreciate that.
Any other questions from the board?
So for this -18, there's no approval tonight, but for the 19, is there expected approval of us?
The -18 is preliminary class, and then you come back for a final, but it is an action item. You need to approve it for them to proceed. And your call whether you close the hearing tonight or continue it for the development piece.
So wait, -18
is the site plan.
is 19 versus. Give me that one more time. So the subdivision is 19, that's preliminary plat, and 18 is full application. Okay. Are there any other members of the audience or public who want to be heard on this? Once, twice. Let's quickly, yeah.
Nick Anderson, I'm an AVP of planning at Champlain College, and we, as you probably heard tonight, worked extensively with this development team for the last few years, and being kind of the closest neighbor to this, we just wanted to voice our support on the record.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify. So the continuation piece is for DPW to continue to review the responses to the traffic.
The recommendation in the report. Where it says everything is treating those requirements.
Yeah. I think we should discuss whether or not we need to do that. So I'm gonna do we need any, do you think you need, anyone think they need anything else in the subdivision?
I don't think so. It's a plat. I don't think there's a lot to. Yeah, it's not a lot of questions we need to ask.
So I'll close
procedural point before we get there.
Yeah.
So in anticipation of the completion, have a slot waiting on the March 11th DRB. We can continue to that and still deliberate tonight and decide it's fine to go ahead and make a decision tonight. Move. What you can't do is close the hearing without recessing to a date time certain.
Right.
And still get on for the other.
Understood.
Well, Scott, can you tell me that your report is dated before we got all the supplemental information? So if your recommendation to continuation, is that changed with today's receipts?
There need to be a change for a couple of conditions, but the primary thing is public works. For public works to weigh in and be satisfied with where we're at with traffic and infrastructure effects.
And you still want that time to,
Sorry.
and you still want that time to do everything?
No, I think that we would be fine with, one of our notes in here about talking about working together to get traffic counts upon opening and supporting each other as we still have to do our conditions for the parkway. There's multiple times that this board has approved things that do have some conditions about as design develops and more information is available. The DPW provides, approval before occupancy. This feels like one of those cases. We really need to get the parkway open. We need to get our own numbers to be able to have the applicant provide an updated piece of information. That really plays heavily into the outcome here. I don't have concerns about allowing them to go forward under their proposed plan. Based on knowing how many total trips are here, I think it's just more about some intricacies of how the road will behave when it's open.
The only other important piece on my end would be if the board decides tonight, there needs to be a reflection that the applicants have produced a phasing plan. It's just a 3-day plan versus previously Corey's done. It wasn't a phasing plan.
Want to capture Laura's comments as a condition. I'm not sure we've taken good enough notes to do that.
Very worded.
Yeah, so. Does anyone think we need to continue B-18 application, or do you think we have enough to deliberate incorporating DPW's comments about further approval?
I think we have enough.
I think we have enough too. We have enough. All right. I'm gonna move that we close the application for ZP 2618 and ZP 2619. We will deliberate on the projects. 26-18 and 19. There's another number right there. 6-18 and -19. I move that we approve the applications, adapt staff's findings and recommendations, subject to a request that staff update its proposed conditions to reflect the supplemental materials provided just before the hearing. And that the Department of Public Works provided the conditions of approval for monitoring and updating numbers to incorporate into the final permit, and to provide those to us so we can incorporate it in our decision. Yeah.
I'll second.
Second. I would also add to that they share those proposed conditions with the applicant, so the applicant can provide concerns to us. All good?
Yeah. Sorry, all the things about. Maybe I'm not understanding the things you were discussing about the parking agreements and.
Yeah, those are conditions that will have to get updated.
Yeah, okay.
Alright. Yeah, that they also submit the parking agreement.
Waste tax.
What'd you say?
Waste tax.
So all those in favor?
All right. Yeah.